Good afternoon to everyone who are watching here from India. Good morning to everyone who are watching from the western part of the world. I am Mashhood Bhatt, your host for Detox, and today we have a very special guest who is joining us all the way from Argentina, Professor Mercedes, and she's going to discuss with us on the topic of perspectives of towards literacy in early childhood education. Before we start, I would like to tell our audience about Professor Mercedes. She is the world president of OMEP, the World Organization for Preschool Education. This is an organization which was found in 1948, and it is an official consultative partner at the United Nations. Professor Mercedes also is a professor. She teaches in the master's degree in early childhood education at the University of Buenos Aires. And she's also teaching students of higher specialization in maternal education at the National University of Santiago del Estero in Argentina. Among many of her accomplishments is also that she's a coordinator, training coordinator, responsible leading, updating of programs for teachers, especially in the context of under-resourced schools. She's also been leading the evaluation of public policy programs in early childhood, a former director of the early childhood education area of the city of Buenos Aires. And she's also a former senior consultant at the United Nations Development Program and a regional training program. She was coordinating in the IIEP UNESCO as well. So thank you so much, Professor Mercedes, for joining us on Detox. We're really looking forward to hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Sunita Gandhi, to Mashhood Bhatt, and to Milita for the invitation to participate in the Disrupted Literacy Talks, an initiative of the Global Dream, this important movement for universal literacy and numeracy. As a psychologist, Jerome Brunet said, language is our most powerful tool for organizing experience and building realities. Therefore, proposing this talk series is a wise and timely initiative for raising awareness of the serious of the crisis in relation to foundational learning during early years, getting commitments to act groundbreaking, effective, and sharing knowledge and good practices to inspire greater action all over the world. I am persuaded that early childhood education and care policies and pedagogies are an issue of diverse conversation and tensions between very different actors and sectors. Odegaard and Kruger said that kindergartens are a social and cultural arena where people, children, teachers, parents with various agendas, aims and views and desires meet. So my opinions are politically and culturally determined. I do not intend to impose them on you a truth, but as knowledge built on my experience as teacher, as university professor, as human rights activist, and as OMEP world president. OMEP has been developing a political and scientific pedagogical conversation about early childhood education and care since 1948, when, at the end of the World War II, it became necessary to put young children at the center of peace building and building a fairer global agenda. I am the second world president that comes from Latin America region in its 73 years of existence. I'm born in the first Congress organized by UNESCO in 1948, and became a global benchmark in defending human rights of children from birth to 8 years old. Our work is focused on education as a right and a tool for the achievement of other rights: comprehensive development, citizenship, well-being, dignity for all children around the world. OMEC was actively involved in the drafting of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and is still committed with its implementation. And in 2015, we advocated for the inclusion of early childhood education and care in the 2030 Agenda. With the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals, the world nations set out to continue and deepen the efforts to overcome the great problems that the planet and the humanity is facing. With the target 4.2, the states commit themselves to ensure that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development, care, and pre-primary education so that they are ready for primary education. This target is articulated and interdependent with the realization of other goals, as 4.6 ensure that all learners achieve literacy and numeracy. 4.7 ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and the skills needed to promote sustainable development, including human rights, gender equality, promotion of cultures of peace and nonviolence, global citizenship, etc. But these targets are not the only that we must attend to. We are also challenged and focused in the enforcement of an integral and holistic human development by achieving other complementary goals concerned with health, well-being, citizenship, sustainable development, climate change, and others. We believe that education is the main catalyzer for the 2030 Agenda, and at the same time, education is a right and a tool for the realization of all rights. And that is why it is fundamental to work and contribute to ensure that states and societies fulfill their commitment to provide equitable, inclusive, quality education to all children all over the world since birth. I want to stress the political dimension of early childhood education and care. Early childhood covers the periods from birth to 8 years old, and state parties should consider their obligations to young children at the light of this definition taken by the Committee on the Rights of the Child in the General Comment number 7. This is a stage of central importance in which the foundations of physical, psychic, cognitive, and social structure are formed. There are risks, of course, to survival and development, but also it contains great possibilities. That is why it is fundamental to create appropriate context for healthy development, sensitive and responsible care, and quality education since birth. Young children are human right holders. They are citizens since birth. I want to repeat this many times because it is invisible for many people all over the world. They are citizens, and human rights are universal, indivisible, interdependent, and must be guaranteed by the states, by the families, and by the communities. The realization of children's rights in early childhood is not limited by their faculties, and the evolution of the faculty is positive. It's a positive process, is enabling, and this is not an excuse for authoritarian practices that restricts child's autonomy and expression. And it is very connected with literacy, expression, and autonomy. As I had said, education is a fundamental right for every person and the basis of the realization of other rights. During early childhood, it is not possible to care without educating, nor educating without caring. They are unified social practices necessary to the full development of each human being. Early childhood care and education drives personal and social development through cultural dialogue, social bonds, and open communication. That is why play, recreational activities, cultural life, and arts are so important. Education should build in children's values of peace understanding, non-discrimination, harmonious relationship with nature and other people, different people, that are principles enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Early childhood education also allows acquiring and improving literacy skills since birth as an intrinsic part of the right to education. The multiplier effect of literacy empowers people, enables them to participate fully in society, and contributes to improve livelihoods. Literacy is also a driver for sustainable development in that it enables greater participation in future learning, improved child and family health and nutrition, reduces poverty, and expands life opportunities and citizenship. Beyond its conventional concept as a setting of reading, writing, and counting skills, literacy is now understood as a means of identification, understanding, interpretation, creation, and communication in an increasingly digital, text mediated, information rich, and fast changing world. However, millions of youth and adults still cannot read and write, and many children fail to acquire basic literacy skills. This results in an exclusion of literate and low skilled youth and adults for full participation in their communities and societies. To change this situation and achieve the goal to ensure inclusive, equitable, and quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, governments, schools, and communities need to strengthen changes in practices and policies. The first goal to achieve an inclusive and equitable early childhood education and care, ensuring access to children around the world. As you know, inclusive education is a process that helps overcome obstacles that limit students' present participation and achievement. Inclusive education systems remove barriers limiting the participation and achieving of all learners, respect the diverse needs, abilities, and characteristics, and eliminate all form of discrimination in learning environment. The first step to inclusive education for early childhood education is access. Access. Quality pre-primary education is the foundation of a child journey. Every state of education that follows relies in this experience and learnings. UNICEF data determined that despite the proven lifelong benefits, more than 175 million children, nearly half of the pre-primary age children globally, are not enrolled in pre-primary education. We are taking about the age of group of 5 years or only 5. But if we think in younger children, is worst. In low income countries, the picture is bleaker, with only 1 in 5 young children enrolled. Children from poor families are the least likely to attend early childhood education programs. More of these programs are private programs. They are not for free. So inequalities stress in this in poor families. For children who have access, poorly trained educators, overcrowded and unstimulating environments, and unsuitable curriculum diminish the quality of experiences. Quality is the other challenge. They failure to provide quality early childhood education, the failure to provide quality early childhood education limits children's future by denying them opportunities to reach the full potential. It also limits the future of the countries, of course, stressing inequalities and reducing the possibilities to promote peaceful and prosperous societies. Quality of early childhood education varies according to different perspectives. Some institutions focus only in the most basic care and survival of children. Others are focused in schooling, applying methods from primary school, from primary education, and focusing academic learning achievements and assessments. Both are inadequate. Luckily, we have others focus on holistic and comprehensive approach by proposing play, creativity, cooperation, and the promotion of self-confidence, autonomy, and participation of children. Another factor linked with quality policies are the educators. The fragmentation and diversity of institutional policies and formats define different certifications requirements depending on the government sector, if it is welfare or education or the private sector, and the age, of course, the age of the group that they serve. Those over the age of 4 tend to have better qualified and paid teachers, and the other less, of course. Likewise, the feminization of the teaching profession is related to gender stereotypes. We advise to include men in early childhood education and teachers that are men. Finally, there are inadequate ratios and the lack of clear regulations to determine the maximum number of children assigned to each educator to guarantee bonds and personalized education and care. These are the changes or the focus. I have put by now the focus in the policies, in public policies. Now we can try to see inside rapidly, to have an insight about the changes in the pedagogical practices. To advance literacy as an integral part of lifelong learning and the 2030 agenda, we must also rethink the pedagogical practices. UNESCO proposes some approaches to promote literacy all over the world. Building strong foundations in early childhood education and care, this is the first one. Providing quality education for all the children. Scaling up, the third is scaling up functional literacy levels for youth and adults who lack basic literacy skills. I am thinking now in parents, in families, in mothers that do not read or write. Developing literate environments. Today, I will take two of these categories related to early childhood literacy. The first one is about quality education. The concept of quality, you know, is ideological, is political and cultural, and cannot be constructed from a universal perspective, of course. Even some big companies want to sell us assessments and quality targets and so on. Quality can be built if we ask ourselves about the meaning of early childhood education, about teaching practice, the meaning of teaching practices. This is a perspective that we agree from Peter Moss, Gunilla Dahlberg, Pence, and so on. The narrative of meaning creation has to do with an ethical position, with the professional position of educators that highlights its relevance and the dialogues with other people. It is, I am thinking, for example, in Reggio Emilia, the dialogue is the basis of the work in quality education in Reggio Emilia. In Italy, it's a very well-known experience. The quality is opposed to the isomorphism of the pedagogical framework of early childhood education with that of primary education, primary school, which extend its didactic functioning with a loss of its own identity, significant as well as the importance of play. This alternative is inadequate for young children. Preschool education has its own identity and has been developing a pedagogical view for many, many years with the contribution of well-known pedagogues and psychologists based on play, on experience of discovery, on art languages, on positive relationships. In early education, play is children's ways to be in the world. Freedom, curiosity, and pleasure are the guiding principles and organizers of pedagogical proposals. In childhood, play is a generator of learning and a medium through which young girls and boys discover and understand the world and begins to structure their multiple languages, their mother tongue, the meanings of their culture. The second category I want to stress today is the need of developing a literate environment. Adults have an important role, a central role in child literacy process. Of course, adults who read are role models for young children. Parents who read are role models for young children. Teachers who read. But we must also take responsibility in creating literate environment. It's not about decorating with letters of alphabets our walls. It is it's a very well-known practice. But to include different media and materials that incorporate the written letter and the numbers as part of our cultural heritage. It is more about enable children's play in environments with materials and interactions with adults and other children, but with the guidance of an educator who promotes entry into the common world of culture. Culture, for example, the food is part of our culture. No? The language, the participation in the history of playful work through share and enrich the play, because we cannot allow only to children to play. We have the opportunity to enrich their play with history, with elements of our culture, with language, with new words, new things that they do not know. Research carried out in Argentina and Chile in the south of Latin America by a very nice colleague I have, Patricia Sarlet. She established that even teachers say that play is very important in early childhood education. The real thing is that they invest only 20% of school time in playing. Only 20%. Even though the teachers insist in the importance of play in the development of the child, the priority is given to schoolwork and to the realization of some daily activities like greetings, registrations, round of exchange, hygienic practices, nourishing, organization of the group. That are important, but not so important as play. So that is performed uncritically and often routinized, diminishing the educational opportunities. The relation between play and development of literacy in early childhood begins with birth, with the first words the mother, when she sings, repeats rhymes, talks to her baby, of course, of all the family, the father, the mother, the brothers and sisters. Language development is a good example for appreciating the importance of the context. Boys and girls do not inherit any particular language or tongue, but learn the one that is in the environment to communicate. Accordingly, those who live in a multilingual environment develop the various languages of interaction with the spontaneity of a native speaker. Sorry. I want to show a little video about this. Please, Mashwood. It you will see children. Dimitri is 4 years old and Rafael 28 months. They are playing with food. a moment.
我要放饭。
好的，谢谢。
对吗？
好的，好吃吗？
这太长了。这我要放。啊！等一下，我还没烧饭。诶，什么怎么回事？啊！等一下，要煮我的饭。别动。
还没放好呢， 把它翻好了。
很烫哦，先不要吃，给我这个，很烫哦。好的。我有手套。
Are you able to hear the audio?
呀，那个饭饭。
Yes.
先溜，我先。不烫呀，我吹很快。
Well, as you can see, they are speaking in Chinese. But at home, they speak in English and French. But in the kindergarten and with the nanny, they speak in Chinese. So, as you see, they are using multilingual environments. They are living in multilingual environment, and they are using various languages of interaction with the spontaneity of a native speaker. This fact is certainly surprising compared with the difficulties involved for the adult mind in learning a second language. This is explained both by the enormous plasticity of child's brain in early years and by how significant the parenting environment and the social interactions in early childhood education and with the nanny and with other people of their environment are for development. This is not a genetic difference in these children. There is not a genetic difference. What changes is the cultural horizon that the family and the preschool environment sets to development. In a few months, when children are 2, 3, 4 years old, children can make marks, draw, sing, and dance before they can read and write, and the process of meaning making becomes real or imagined. Symbols and metaphors are signs to more formal modes of representation and communication. The first literacies of childhood can be said to be arts, and modes including visual, oral, language, movement, and gestural modes. It is through arts that a child develops the foundation of the understanding and awareness of symbol systems and continue to develop their use in expression and communication. The play-based approach and the art-making set out as a holistic form of first literacies in early childhood. Reading and writing was described by Vygotsky as the second-order symbol system. The precursors, the first-order signs and symbol systems, are picturing, drawing, storing, dancing, dramatizing. These may be regarded as the child's first languages and their primary means of seeing, interpreting, and expressing themselves and the world around them. These core learning experiences through the art and through play in early years are often forgotten when the child gets into more academic focus of learning the second order system of reading, writing, and arithmetics. Well, in order to close my first part of the presentation, I want to stress to close saying that it is really important to assume a play, a didactics, a didactics founded in play and in art for children in the first years. And of course, in the first two levels of the primary school, because they are still in early childhood, in 6 and 7 years. So we do not have to forget the importance of playing and arts languages in early childhood for developing literacy. Well, I am open to your questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Mercedes, for giving this very, very rich overview, and the it is quite amazing how large the canvas of what you have covered with so much depth is it is actually very, very enriching, and I think all the people who are listening to this or will be watching this in the future, I think it's a very solid and refreshing background to how crucial early childhood learning is, especially in the child's development, in equity, and making sure that all the it completely determines the development outcomes and the success which the child will have in his or her life in the future as well. So thank you so much for sharing this. One question which I had, it strikes me as well when you said that when the child comes to school, uh, in the early grade, kindergarten 1 and 2, right? So the focus becomes more on discipline, on the play aspect just goes out, because it seems like our schools are so conditioned around discipline, lesson plan, learning outcomes, and this is what a lot of teachers in early grades also face. So in your assessment, what needs to be the conversation with early grade teachers? What challenges they face, and what is required in order to build their capacity to introduce play in the early grade?
Well, I think that we have to go back to the history and the identity of kindergartens, because about 300 years ago or 200 years ago, with the ideas of some pedagogies has developed the importance of play and autonomy of children, and the richness they have inside, the curiosity is the way that they can fulfill all the creativity and the knowledge. They are so curious about what happened with the adult world. What is because even the babies, little babies, they can see that the sight of the mother is going to another place, not only over them, and they follow the sight and they begin to discover the world and begin to discover other people, relations, etc. So they are so interested in that. We have to know that the other issue is that with teachers is that we have to inherit all the children our culture. We have to donate our culture, and the culture is very by distributed in our communities. There are a lot of inequalities, not only economic inequalities, the access to culture is unequal. So the main issue that we have as teachers to work is to put in value the culture of our communities, of our families, to work with our families and with their knowledge, and of course to enrich that culture with other music, with other ideas, with other readings, with other materials, opening the world for children and enriching the world for children. But at the same time, we have to take into account that children are transform cultures. They create children culture. So it is important to leave the children to develop their playing activities and to see, to observe what is happening with their play, with the language, with their interests, and use these elements in order to enrich and to enforce their activities and the process of humanization they are going through. In early childhood, we see that they are very malleable, and this is a very rich and very fast period of life. And the experience are unrepeatable in their history, and we have to be all the time observing and guiding them and challenging them with other activities. For that reason, it is not possible to see in kindergartens children seated in their chairs. Once I said in Latin America, well, we are very revolutionary, you know, in our culture, in our way of expressing ourselves with our bodies, with the dance, and we speak aloud and things like that. But when you go to some kindergartens, you see children seated. And once I said, I want to burn all the chairs and the tables. I want to burn them. And children playing in big and in big spaces. And if you do not have, for example, of course, inequalities are also in schools, and some schools are very poor. They do not have materials, but they have a community. They have the possibility to go out. They have the possibility to use the resources of the community to involve parents in bringing children since the first year with richness. So one of connecting this with public policies, I think that with the teachers, we do not have to only focus in didactics. We have to focus also in public policies. We have to ask for financing. Because of that, in OMEP, we are interested not only in quality inside kindergarten education. We are very worried about financing, and connected with, for example, the context of the pandemic, when we are thinking what will happen next with our institutions. What will happen with the investment in education? And of course, I think that we have to be very aware, because the investment in technology will be important, of course. But in early childhood, you have to invest in play, in spaces, in better teachers, in professional teachers, the possibility to train teachers in order to work better with the communities and families, because one of the things that the pandemic has teach us is the importance to be partners in education and care of the child with the families. We cannot raise a child without the community and the family.
Right.
This is one of the things that we have learned, really learned, because in the past we said that, but now we have
Right.
in the skin this experience. What had happened with the lockdowns? Many countries in Latin America had been locked down by for more than a year, without services, without kindergartens, without daycare centers, without any other service for early childhood. But teachers and educators had learned to communicate with families, because we do not advise the possibility to have, for example, Zooms with little children. Perhaps one interview with 2 or 3 children, but for one moment, for a song, for a short play. But the main issue is to talk and to advise and to collaborate with families, because they are really educating. They have been educating all the time, of course, because care and education are only one practice. But
Right.
in this moment, the orientation, the possibility to support family is the main issue that we have as teachers.
Hmm. Right. Professor Mercy, that's really fascinating, and I really found it quite intriguing when you said that when you saw the chairs and the tables, you just wanted to burn them, because chairs and tables, in a way, is, it talks about structure, discipline, didactics, as you mentioned. And here, I mean, it's a situation. For example, here when we see young children in the same school sharing space with higher grade students of grade 3, 4, 5, 6. So there the culture is so much about noise is not good for learning. Noise distracts. Having children of younger ages in maybe the same space, it just puts that culture also on them, so that becomes a challenge. One question, one point which you mentioned, very important, about parent engagement, right? You talked about having rich literacy environments, which does not is not limited to having alphabets stuck on walls in big fonts, but it is about arts, it's about music, it's about culture, and that about history and stories. One question, which a challenge which, for example, we here face in India is a lot of parents are unfortunately they have a daily wage to earn. They are financially stressed, and taking care of children is something, especially for early childhood education, is something which many parents here, no, not that they are to blame, but they say that, okay, let's drop them to the early learning center, or it's the responsibility of the teacher or the school. And the pandemic has shown us that it is so important that parents and community, they because children are now 24 hours in the community, so it has become even more important for parents to engage. So, would you like to share any parent engagement innovations in Latin America, some, a parent engagement program, something which signals to parents that yes, they are important, and even if they are, let's say, not very educated or literate, but they have most crucial role to play. So would you like to share any
Yes,
experience with
yes.
such a
Well, it have been very different experiences and very varied because the connections and internet connections and the devices are not for all. Of course, half of the families has internet connections, less than half of the families, and yeah, but most of the family has, for example, telephones, cell phones. So through Instagram, some teachers had sent ideas, short ideas, how to play, trying to discover what were the games that that communities had in their traditions, and of course trying to recover the experiences of playing of the parents when they were children, they were young. So and also with grandparents, of course, and with traditions in community spaces, in outside in the parks. For example, some teachers join children in the parks because they cannot go to schools, and they send these ideas to family. They meet 4 or 5 families at the same times online when they could, and sometimes they used the radio or the television. In Argentina, for example, the television was a public policy from the government. In the first years of the lockdown, they began to develop a lot of programs in order to orient parents. And of course, with the radio, because in rural areas, the radio is the main. It is a tradition in Argentina, in the Patagonia, in the South where nobody lives. There is a child. There is a child there, and of course, it is important. For example, in Uruguay, they had in the previous years, before the pandemic, they had developed a lot of experiences with technology. They have sent computers to all the families, and all the teachers and children were used to manage with computers and technology. So when the pandemic came, Uruguay was the first country in organize a good response for children. But the problem is when you have lack of services, and as inequalities are crossing all the continent, some other countries did not have this experience. So teachers made a lot of personal efforts, and that is not good. That is good for children and for those children that teachers have, but and for teachers' ethics. But it is not a real response, because the real response, the responsibility with children are in the hands of the states. And the state has to build policies, public policies, in order to support not only children, they have to support teacher practices. And the support of teacher practices is not possible if you ask the teachers to use their own cell phone and their own line that they pay with their money. So we are learning a lot. But I am very optimistic because I do not think this period only thinking in what we have missed. We had learned a lot, of course. We have learned a lot. We have learned that it is important to develop step by step strong policies. We do not have to rely only in technology, in new technologies, because we have also the paper and the pen is a technology, of course, is another technology. But we have several channels and several technologies, a lot of technologies that we have to based. And in early childhood, we cannot advise children to be exposed all the time to screens. And but the other thing that we have learned is we have to be close partners with families, and we have to enforce. And the experience is that when parents begin to play again with children and begin to understand and to remember their own games when they were children, they began to enjoy that moment of relation, and all is better. Violence when it goes down, children are more connected with language, with pleasure, with real bonds and relationship with their communities and families. So I want to see this moment as not only as a real problem that I know that we are going through real problems, that violence with children has increased and so on, but we are learning also, and we can work in new opportunities for early childhood education and care in the future. But we have to be aware. The money has to be invest in early childhood, in education for
Right.
all.
Right. And that's you're very strongly put forward the point about public policy, about early childhood education being at the center of public policy. And it's something which is where a lot of movements in a lot of different countries is towards is gaining now more awareness, because this concept of human rights, which you just started right at the beginning, that children, as soon as the child is born, he or she becomes a citizen, and it is important that they are also able to enjoy this right as well. I had two more questions. I think we would like to also show one comment which we are getting here from Mexico, which is the first language contact in the human being is through the mother, which is important for its development. So, yeah, in terms of engaging the mother of the children, would you like to share as to what should be the strategy of public programs when it comes to signaling or messaging to the mother of the child in order to ensure good outcomes for the children at early age?
Yes, yes. I have seen that this question comes from Mexico. And for example, Mexico has developed toy libraries in very poor communities, in slums, huge slums, because as you know, Mexico is an amazing country, but it has a lot of inequalities. And in the toy libraries, the mothers are oriented, and also the fathers, of course. We have to ask equality in between genders related to the care and education of early childhood, because the father is necessary as a model, and they are oriented in play and in different strategies in order to raise the child. But going back to your question, there are some other public policies, because I believe that early childhood, children in early childhood has the right to be educated, but it is not the same to go to school. I am not saying that all the children have to go to school at 45 days when they have 45 days, because I am saying that they have the right of education. So the state has to develop programs like, for example, in Cuba. In Cuba, the program is called Educa a tu hijo. It is said, educate your child. And parents are invited to go to parks or community centers in order to talk about the characteristics, the psychological characteristic of development in child, how you can organize the environment for them, about how to connect children with other children in informal spaces and things like that. So this program has been spread all over Latin America, because 45% of the families do not send their children to any early daycare center in the first years. So families have to be oriented, has to be enriched in their approaches to raise the child. And there are lots of programs, very nice programs. And of course, as I had said, we are now using the TV for that. And we have to be aware that in these programs and in these channels, like, for example, Paca Paca in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, it is a channel without any advertisement. It is correct, without ads, because it's for children and for families, and you do not have ads. You have to be also very aware to separate market from children. This is another issue in order to educate children, to keep them separate, and to train parents and communities in order to be very aware about the market and things that we are. I remember a mother that says, in my house, all is in plastic. And she was, and she was putting that as a value. And I said, well, the better thing that can happen for a child is to offer them nature, not plastic. Yes, not security. The idea of security because it's plastic. Plastic is chemic. The better issue is to go with the child to a park, to a wood, to the beach, to things, to places that offers them a lot of diversity and the possibility to ask themselves about nature. So nowadays, some mothers give them the cell phone to be entertained, no?
Yes.
I am in this I am in this world, of course, and when my grandchildren comes at home and I have to cook, I give them
Right.
sunscreen. Of course, they
To
want
keep them
to be
engaged and busy.
yeah, they keep them busy and secure. But uh, I I have to make the effort to enrich their lives and to understand nature, because if they do not understand nature or culture of or the difference between people, they will not build citizenship, literacy, and so on.
Right. Very, very important point which you mentioned here. With this big global push towards education, technology, edtech, and it's so important that we don't lose that touch. That children do not lose that touch with their natural and real environment as well. One last question which we wanted to also share with you for your insights. You talked about multilingual situations. You showed us this wonderful video of these lovely children speaking so many different languages at the same time. We face a situation at times. Multilingualism is a great asset, but sometimes the challenge becomes that children at home are learning different languages, as happens in a country like India. The language at home is different. The parents speak a different language, but when they go to school, the language there is different. The public official language, medium of instruction. In such a context, is there any evidence, or is there any experience which you would like to share, where this challenge of multilingual education, different at home and different at school, has been positively taken care of, and how can such a situation be addressed? If you would like to share your thoughts on that.
Yes, yes. For example, Bolivia is a pluricultural country, and they have lots of indigenous communities, as many countries. Of course, in Argentina, it is the same. And in the last year, we have stressed the importance of multicultural approaches in early childhood education. And we have incorporated community educators that manage with their own languages. Because the problem is that it is a divorce between school and homes and communities. And this new educator can cross efforts between the official language, the main and the power of the official language in each country, and the value of the indigenous language and the mother tongue language inside the school and preschools, of course. If you put, because sometimes I remember when I was a child, I lived in the country, inside the country, in La Pampa. It's huge and very wide landscape we had, and with woods and so on. And we have some children in at school. Some of my pals were from indigenous communities, but they were ashamed because their language was something like forbidden language. But nowadays we have teachers, educators, community educators that came to 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 the school and share that language with the children, and put in value this language inside the culture of the school. And this allows more communication and enrich, of course, the upbringing of every child. So this now it is very difficult because some languages have been lost because of the colonization from some languages over other languages. For example, the Spanish in our community. But we have the responsibility to put in value and to recognize the mother tongue and the importance of mother tongue for children at the same time that they are learning other languages. And of course, other languages are the art languages that we do not have to forget in early childhood.
Thank you, Professor Mercedes, for sharing that. Like ending on that very important note of respecting and helping integrate these different languages, and it's so crucial that I hope that this talk has really triggered a lot of ideas and thoughts in our audience and the people who will be watching this as well. It's completely new way of looking at early childhood education, as you've talked about, of looking at it through child rights, through human rights, and also and when we talk about print-rich environments, it's not just like surround the child with alphabets, but it's about play, it's about learning by doing, through experience in culture, languages, and so thank you so much, Professor Mercedes, for joining us. And we have learned a lot, and I'm sure all the members who are joining us and all the stakeholders who will be watching this will learn a lot, and it'll surely spark some ideas in them, and help them to commit to the cause of early childhood education and literacy as well. Thank you to all the audience members as well who are joining us live and who will be watching this video. We'll see you in the next session of Detox tomorrow. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mashhur. See you soon.